members have been provided a copy of a report that came out and a summary by Texas A&M Corpus Christi. There was a community initiative called Community as a Startup that was led by both Texas A&M Corpus Christi as well as in partnership with IC Squared, which is a program and an entity that's created by the University of Texas at Austin. And what they did is they came in and did a evaluation of the community. We had presentations, different discussions, focus groups, individual surveys, and they were looking at what our community needed for economic development and new businesses and entrepreneurship. And what they did is they put together this program called a TEAM program, and to develop a TEAM center. And TEAM stands for Technology, Entrepreneurship, Arts, and Makerspace. And so basically what they have found and identified as a potential community goal is to put together this center. And just a little bit more details on it. The T stands again for technology. And so it's looking at some light industry with a technology focus, and to have a workforce development center that would do training for that particular initiative. They're also providing for an entrepreneurship portion of a workforce development center that would use our local resources, our retirees who have had their own businesses. They would help train others that want to do startup businesses, help them with their business plans and other types of help that they need, such as accounting and attorney help. The third space is art space that's proposed, which is for an arts incubator, which is kind of self-explanatory and is expanding what we have already accomplished and are accomplishing with the Arts Center and the new conference center. And then finally, Makerspace, which focuses on instruction on equipment and different techniques and processes for things like laser cutters, 3D additive manufacturing, watercolors, water cutters, and the like. So they produced this report, and we've been going over it and studying it. And the Russell Francis, who is in charge of that program, made us aware that he had had discussions with and thinks that our project would be eligible for an Economic Development Administration grant. So the EDC has been looking at that. They met with our regional representative for the EDC and talked to him about whether that would be a project that they would want to entertain. The feedback that we got is this is their bread and butter. That's what they like to fund. And specifically, they liked the project because it's leveraging what they've already invested in the community with the arts project that they're already doing. We asked some questions about just the logistics and some different things like that. Of course, anytime that you're looking at a grant, you have to look at, is there any matching funds available? Because of the particular circumstance that we're in, we are likely going to be eligible for 100% grant as opposed to the typical 80-20. You do have to demonstrate need in the application, but you can ask for that. Their process is that you develop a grant application and you turn it in at the beginning of the month. And at the end of the month, their committee, your project manager that you work with on the grant, meets with the committee, presents that application, and then you get feedback generally whether it's going to be a project that they want to fund, and then you go from there. But it's pretty solid. Once the committee meets and makes a recommendation, that's pretty solid as to whether the project is going to be funded or not. What has happened in between the time that the EDC met with the Economic Development Administration is they've had a meeting today and talked about the potential for a project, and in anticipation of knowing that it's going to be on the LGC meeting. So really what we have is we wanted to talk about whether the community wanted to look at the possibility of doing a grant application through the EDA for this project. And one of the things I should have mentioned previous to that before we get into the different items is this project has been on our economic development plan that was adopted almost 2 years ago. It was an initiative that we also applied for a grant with the GLO. They are as well doing some planning services. But there was a three-prong portion of the grant that we had applied for. One was target industry study, one was workforce development, and one was asset inventory and implementation. The GLO is doing 2 of the 3 of those, and it's a regional project. It's not just for Aransas County, but it's regional in nature. And they're moving through that process, and we do have representatives with that initiative. Although we asked for workforce development to be included in that study, it is not part of the study. So that's one of the reasons why the separate initiative was done in the study by Texas A&M Corpus Christi and UTIC squared was to start looking at what our needs were in that area. So I apologize for not giving that background because this has been kind of in the works starting with about 2 months after the storm. So today what we want to talk about is this providing the board more information about the opportunity, and then taking a look at do we want to start exploring the grant, and what would it take in order to do that? And then finally, if there were to be a grant application, who would be leading and secondary on the grant application itself? And there are a number of choices for that. But that's part of the regular agenda. I just kind of wanted to lead up for, in this overview, but happy to answer any questions about the study itself or what the general idea and proposal is that we'll be talking about later.
What is the anticipated size of the grant? I mean, how much money are we talking about?
So the exploratory committee is going to have to look at that in detail. And so we haven't gotten to that level. When Russell Francis was talking about the project, he is thinking that the project would be probably on the order of about $7 million by the time we put together all the different space and the training equipment that's necessary. And I might add to that, so the grant itself is not just for space. It can also pay for the training equipment that we need for these different focus areas for workforce development. Their requirement is that it be, the life of the machinery needs to be about 20 to 25 years. So they are not looking to fund, regular FF&E or your computers. They're looking for the hardcore training equipment that's necessary in order to operate a workforce development center.
Another question. We've already had a $5 million EDA grant here for the Arts Center, and that's good. How would this grant affect any other EDA grants? I mean, that's $12 million. Let's say it is $7 million. So that's $12 million. How much money is the EDA going to give to our area? I mean, is there going to be a negative effect on anybody else who wants to put in for an EDA grant?
So you might want to elaborate on that. because I don't think there's been any public discussion so far about other applications that might be pending. So you may want to elaborate on that some, Malcolm.
Sure.
Just from a history point of view, and I can't, completely forecast, how everything would be perceived. But originally under the Hurricane Harvey allocation, which we're not talking about a Hurricane Harvey allocation. So that project is funded and closed out, and all the applications that are going through that particular source have been sourced. Originally, the Aransas County area was supposed to get two grants funded. We had gotten an indication for the Art Center, but we had also gotten an indication that Paws and Taws was going to be funded through that. So they were already going to give us two grants at that particular time. And as we know, Paws and Taws ended up pursuing a different route and abandoned applying for that particular form of funding. The allocation that we're talking about right now is in their regular public works grant application. They have different ones. Some of them are more oriented toward planning grants. And it's an additional appropriation that was given by Congress as a result of COVID. That's about what I can say. Now, as far as
let me express my concern. The district put in for an EDA grant. We didn't make it to the finish line. And that was, of course, to help build the new marina and the development of the properties that the new marina would support. Well, we're going to do that again. We're convinced that a new marina and all that would bring with it, possibly a hotel, retail outlets, and things like that, are going to bring a lot of revenue into Aransas County. So I hesitate. If this grant is going to mean that grant has no chance of acceptance, I hesitate to push for this grant, because I'm not sure that this grant is going to bring the amount of revenue into the county that a new marina, a new hotel, a new retail outlets, plus the jobs that we're talking about. So I'm a little concerned. I mean, we're looking at pottery wheels and kilns and things, which I believe the Art Center is already going to do. We're looking at a few other things that I think the school district ought to be involved in, and I'm wondering if they will have any involvement. So although nobody likes to get money for the area more than I do, I'm a little concerned that this grant might inhibit us getting any more grants on projects, which of course I have to consider will be very beneficial to us here in Aransas County.
Malcolm, y'all have a new grant administrator. At least that's the last time that we spoke. You had indicated y'all had hired a new one. So have they gone and met with the EDC to see what you would have to do differently in your application in order for it to be more successful this next time?
Well, yes, no. The answer to that is no, because we've just begun the process. Our local contact is working with them to put together that package. We have not contacted the EDA yet, because I think it's a little premature. I'm all for grants. I mean, everybody should realize that, but I do have this concern about how much money is this going to bring into Aransas County, and is this grant going to fulfill that need?
One thing I would, just for everyone, while we're kind of talking about the opportunity and options for it, this is a first come, first served grant, and the grant is open already. They are already taking applications. As soon as the funding is exhausted, then that's it. Our area was allocated, Texas, I believe, is 236 or 38 million. However, they're already tapping into that to shore up their revolving loan funds that they've already funded in the past. They're going to be providing additional resources for that. They'll also be funding other centers of excellence like Russell Francis they've already made an award to them for additional years funding. So regardless of what we're applying for, timing is going to be critical to move quickly if that's something that we choose to do, because it is quite possible for the funding to fall out. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to get it on this agenda as quickly as possible. The more time passes, the less likely a project will be funded.
Well, I don't want to throw a monkey wrench in it, but these are the questions that I have. I assume the Art Center has bought into this, that they will be a participant. What about the school district? It would seem to me some of these things would fit very well with some of the programs they either have or could expand.
They're a critical component of it. It's my understanding that some representatives have already spoken with the school district. Diane, can you speak to that?
Well, Joey has been on all of the initial phone calls over the last.
Can't hear.
Hold on one second.
Joey Pitek has been on all the calls over the last month, and any collaboration that could be done there, he is pursuing that, would like to be on the exploratory committee.
As well as as part of my background, I probably should have also noted prior to the formation of the local government corporation, there was an existing economic development committee that had been functioning for many years. The school district was a part of that committee. I think they met on a monthly basis. And that immediately prior to the LGC being formed, that committee had been talking about a workforce development project. It had been on a semi-regular item on that agenda.
Well, I've voiced my concerns. I'm not saying that we shouldn't at least look into this and start a process, but like I said, I voiced them, and I will get with our people, PMI, and find out what their assessment is. If it's going to keep us from being able to put in an EDA grant with some hope of success, well, that will just set the project back for the new marina and all the associated things which that will mean. We'll set that back to a later date.
Malcolm, why did your grant application fail last time?
I think, in all honesty, I think the Art Center did a whole lot better. Had a whole lot more support for it. I think at that time we were unclear on some of the items on what the overall benefit, how many jobs would there be, and that sort of thing. But now we've cleared that up. We now have we did not, in honesty, we just didn't have the expertise to pursue it the way we should have. So that was on us. But that problem is taken care of because now we have an expert grant writer, and I think we'll put in a very excellent proposal. Just concerned about two of them for such a large amount of money. I'm looking at about a $5 million about a $5 million grant from the EDA. So I just don't know how that's going to work if we're going in for $12 million on two different grants. But be that as it may, we'll just have to see how that works out.
I will say I had some discussion or a limited interaction on that particular grant. The other thing that hurt them a lot was a determination by the project manager, the EDA project manager, that the grant for the jobs forecasting, they weren't going to allow any jobs to be counted for that unless they had a company sign on with a commitment for the jobs. So when the application was turned in, they weren't able to show much job creation because of that determination.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and that has set us back again because we have our RFP ready to go. And we can easily do that except for this pandemic situation, which has put us on hold, because if we put that out, the RFP, and we accept someone, then we'll be able to meet that portion of the grant project. But right now, putting out an RFP for development of this kind of development, I think probably isn't the best idea. I don't want to wait much longer. Things are opening back up. But if it wasn't for that, the RFP would have already been done.
So Judge, on this topic, we might want to wrap up just, the presentation section, and we can talk about all these topics further on the regular agenda, because that's really, where we should talk about it in detail. And one thing I do want to say about the agenda that you're looking at and action items, you're not approving submittal of a grant application. Everything that you're looking at today is whether you want to expend the time and resources to explore it and and develop an application. But the actual approval is not on your agenda.
Well, I personally don't see anything wrong with looking into this item number 1 further, but that's just me. Anyone else?
Well, I'm going to look into it. I agree with the judge there. I just had some reservations I thought I should express.
Okay. Shall we go on to item number 2?
Yes.
Sure.
All right, presentation, discussion, and possible action authorizing issuance of a request for proposals following federal procurement standards for grant applications and administration services for the EDA.
I'm sorry, sir. I apologize. I didn't answer you correctly. We need to go to item number 3 on the consent agenda first.
Item number 3 on the consent agenda.
Yeah, before we get into regular agenda.
Okay, discussion and action on ratification and filing for an employer's identification number. Such ratification authorizing Kim Fouts to follow up on the items and have appropriate board members sign and submit the required form. Okay.
Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt, but did I miss the citizens to be heard section of the meeting? I don't see it on the agenda.
So there is currently not a citizen. So Mr. Hutt, if you want to address something, as when we are working on regular agenda items, you're welcome to do that.
Well, I'd like to speak about the consent agenda then, especially the item, the acceptance of the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay. So Judge Mills, what we're doing is we're doing Roman numeral 3, just all of the consent agenda items. And then I'm hearing that he wants to talk about one of those. So if you wouldn't mind reading all of the consent agenda items into the record.
All right, I'm sorry.
And then y'all can talk about the request Mr. Hutt has.
Discussion and possible action of ratification of election of officers, chairman, vice chairman, treasurer, secretary, including election of the following: Chairman C.H. Burt Mills Jr., Aransas County Judge; Vice Chairman Kelly Cole, Town of Fulton Mayor; Treasurer Pat Reels, City of Rockport Mayor; Secretary Malcolm Bekow, Navigation District Chairman. And discussion and possible action of ratification designation of a bank depository designating American Bank of Rockport, Texas. Also discussion and possible action and ratification filing for the employer identification number, such as ratification authorizing Kim Faust to follow up on the items and have the appropriate board member sign and submit the required form. And also discussion and possible action on the meeting minutes from the April 6th, 2020 meeting. All right, that being said, Mr. Do you have something?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir, I do. After the last LGC meeting, I sent you an email that was responded to by Mrs. Faust, said, Jeff, thank you for your comments. We will look into them and report back to the LGC board accordingly. Are we going to have is Mrs. Faust going to report back on these issues? Because the issues that I brought up signify that the last meeting held on April 6th was an illegal meeting because Mr. Rios, Mayor Rios, acted as the director of the LGC appointed by the city of Rockport. And as I pointed out, actually at that time, it was Barbara Gertner, who was Ward 4 city council person. I also raised issue with Kelly Cole being nominated and voted to at that time by the board when she was not a director. And I noticed in that meeting, Mr. Rios, Mayor Rios made two motions and in that meeting. And that was my first question I asked about the meeting minutes. And then I had a follow-up where I asked about the RFP process. So I'd like to know if that can be discussed at this time.
Judge, may I respond to that?
Hey, yes.
Okay, all of the items I inspected the agenda, each individual item in response to Mr. Hutt's submittal of concerns. And all of the items on the consent agenda are put specifically on the agenda to cure the issues that he outlined. I looked at every single vote to make sure that anything that Mayor Rios at the time had a motion on or voted on is now being separately ratified by this consent agenda. So we're addressing every single item with this ratification action.
But you're on the consent agenda. You're saying that the minute meetings from April 6th, 2020 were approved. How can they be approved when there was illegal motions made and illegal votes taken? Wouldn't you need to disqualify that meeting completely?
No, we had a quorum.
And my last question about the RFP process, you said that this would be brought up also?
When it was appropriate to do that, we're not taking any action or considering anything today on any kind of relationship with the LGC and any other entity. Later in the agenda, we do have a service contract, the draft that the LGC will be presenting to the different sponsoring entities, but we're not discussing right now, and it's not posted for the matter that you're talking about, which is who the LGC would be contracting for with the work. Okay,
that wasn't us. And can I get the notice of when the administrators of the LGC last met to discuss the contracts?
The administrators?
Yes, ma'am. In the interlocal agreement in section 6, it has, it talks about that all agreements will be monitored, contract for service, it'll be monitored by a group of administrators. This administration is defined as
Okay, we'll have to judge, this part is not on the agenda right now. We're talking about the sir.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
We just have to deal with this later, at a later time.
Yes, sir.
All right, on the consent agenda, is there any motions?
I'll move to approve.
Motion made by Mayor Rios. Do I have a second? Well, I'll second it, if that's permissible. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those against, signifying by saying.
Nay, I'm against it, approving it.
You
That's
vote,
Malcolm.
you vote against approving it?
Yes, I do, because I do consider that we ought to redo it because of the problems which Jeff and others, quite frankly, have discussed with me. And I think I know that it would be time consuming, but just to alleviate any questions about the legality of who's who and the things that were done because of a problem, inadvertently, the problem that existed with a non-director, I think it'd be best if we went ahead and just redid it. And then there wouldn't be any questions about any legality issues.
This does
And
redo it. This is the redo.
Yeah, this is what we're doing, isn't it, Kim?
It is, yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
You're still voting against it?
So what I'm hearing is if we do this and now we've redone it and then there will be no issues of legality, is that correct?
Right. Item number 1 addresses that on the consent agenda.
Oh, well, then I'll vote yay.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, sounds like it carries.
Mm-hmm.
All right, then we go to the regular agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We've already done the first one under the regular agenda. I don't know how I guess my papers were crossed. Anyway, we'll go to item number 2 on in the regular agenda, presentation, discussion, and possible action authorizing the issuance of request for proposal following federal procurement standards for grant application and administration of services, economic development administration grant. Kim, are you going to be the presenter?
Yes, sir. So I'll cover number 1 and number 2. These are all related.
Right.
So as the EDC was doing some of their background research on the grant, we started to take a look at the different issues related to applying for an application and some of the logistical issues. And we identified as some areas of concern that needed to be looked at. And originally when the idea came up and it was discussed with Dr. Francis and also with the EDA, the thought and discussion was that the LGC would be the primary application, and then potentially the EDC as the secondary to work with a grant administrator and that type of thing. So when you apply for a grant, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One is that you can hire a grant administrator through a very official procurement process since it's a federal grant. And then they prepare the grant application and then administer it after you receive the grant. In this particular case, what we found through our research is in all but EDA, the grant administrators usually don't have a charge for their services, and it's not allowed by the program. In this particular case, though, EDA does allow grant application fees to be covered. And as a result of that, grant administrators in general, when they put in a proposal, they have two components to their fee. One is called pre-award, which is the application itself, and then post-award, which is the administering of the grant. We don't have the resources in place to pay for a grant administrator. I went back and looked at it for the application portion. Now the administration portion is grant eligible, and so that's not a problem. But we do have the issue at hand with an application preparation fee by an administrator. So we have discussed the possibility of the county being part of the application, and that I would prepare the grant so that we didn't have those fees up front just to get an answer. We also have other, there's some other benefits to that as well. So some of the discussion that we had was the possibility of the county has a project, which is a dome project, a hurricane dome project that has been on the list for a very long time, that we are planning on applying for through, it's called CDBG mitigation. That call for projects is soon, but it has not been issued yet. So therefore we haven't applied yet. One of the ideas that came out of, starting the vetting of this idea was the possibility of having a dual purpose facility, where the facility would be a workforce development and entrepreneur center, which is 99% of the time of operation. And then the other 1% would be for the Hurricane Dome, which that is used by our first responders. So if we were to have a storm, the first responders could go to that to that facility, and they would be protected, and equipment would be protected in that particular dome or facility. And so it would be more of a dual purpose type project. And in that regard, if we took that approach, then it would involve both the county and the LGC and or the EDC in the application process. So that's why I wanted to bring that up when we're starting to talk about the potentially going out for procurement. I'm not sure, it depends on what kind of scenario that the group feels is the best direction to go if we're to proceed with this. And so it's possible, there's different scenarios as far as what entities are involved and who takes the lead and the secondary lead. So we may not have a need for bringing in a grant administrator right now, as noted on number 2, in the event that the county was involved and I prepared the grant application. So right now, I think, if we could stay with number 1, see if the LGC is interested in moving forward and exploring an application, and then what assumptions we might have as to who might take the lead. That's really kind of their first point of order.
Okay.
Anybody interested in exploring?
Well, I think it's something worth pursuing. Now, I know they've been talking to us since the hurricane about the possibility of getting a dome. I like the idea of using the dome for housing this EDA grant, workforce incubator, things like that, and training program. I don't think we have any room in the city, Judge. I know you had talked at one point about the airport.
Yeah,
Consider that.
that would be the location we'd be looking at if
Okay.
the county participated in it. Yes.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense on a county level also, as opposed to just just Rockport or just Fulton. This would be an Aransas County initiative, which all the communities would benefit from. As far as training, I mean, we train whoever, or anyone in Aransas County.
I agree. I can't speak for the Commissioners Court, but I agree with you on that.
I also would agree to that. I think that's the best plan.
Okay, so
So Kim, you think, I mean, you've done these before. You don't see anything unusual if you were going to administer the grant?
No, and what I would recommend, I mean, I can apply. I've done multiple EDA grant applications. I mean, the key is to work very closely with the project manager. I think in this case, a committee could be very, very helpful and that's one of the agenda items. We need a group of experts to band together to get all the information that we need in order to prepare the application and to properly vet it, you know, for the community.
Sure.
But I think that, yes, I could use the information from our experts and work with the EDA project manager to put together a good application. We may also be able to learn from other communities, both San Antonio, Houston, and Beaumont have all received this same type of project from the EDA, and we could contact them to find out how to put our best foot forward in getting a successful application. After we get through that process and we get feedback from the committee, it would be at that time that if we were successful, that then we could go out for a grant administrator and kind of do things the way we always do it, where the county has a limited, you know, function and support, but it's paid for by the grant. And then we also have a grant administrator there that do some very valuable things and is also grant eligible.
all right. So do we need that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I think the first one, Judge, on item number 1 would give us what the framework for everything.
Framework to go on. So do I have a motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Second, Chairman DeCal. All those in favor? Signify.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries.
And I would ask that we not take action on number 2, or actually maybe direction requesting that I be allowed to, that would have to be authorized by the county. So we could look at number 2, but not in the way that it's currently phrased, that it would be a request to the county to allow county to prepare the grant application.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Rios. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, presentation, discussion, possible action authorizing development of a draft memorandum of understanding with the Aransas County Partnership Economic Development Corporation for the grant application with EDA. So that will be also prepared by you, right, Kim?
Yes, sir. And it's just, that's just something that would have to be prepared once the committee meets and works through who would be best to be, you know, partnering with the county, whether it would be the EDC on the application or the LGC. We can easily amend that. So just direction to go ahead and prepare it, subject to, you know, the applicants being determined.
You got
That we
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Presentation, discussion, possible action, request of Aransas County Partnership Economic Development Corporation to form the exploratory committee Team Center Exploratory Committee to oversee research and development and submittal to the EDA grant application.
So this one is just, this is tapping into the EDC as a resource. Of course, the LGC doesn't have any staff or any other board members except for the 4 present today. So this would be kind of a delegation asking for their assistance in preparation and to form that committee to provide the support that's necessary to get the information that we need for the grant.
How many people on this committee, Kim?
The EDC met earlier today and had some discussions. They didn't talk about how many. They did talk about the possibility of who might be on that needed for that committee. And so I believe there are multiple that the EDC, some members are here at this meeting if someone wants to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, this is Jatine. We're looking at the school district representation from the county. Possibly if we're looking at the airport side, Mike Greer would be involved. And then since what Kim mentioned, part of a component of this team project is arts. So we'll look at the Art Center having a representation and then a few members from the EDC and then financial aspect of it as well.
So 5 to 7 members talking about.
It might be more because I mean there's part of it that I think we talked about engineers, architects, it's as needed kind of thing. We kind of got to know what's going to be needed. That's just at the level what we discussed. But Kim might say, hey, we need somebody that's going to present us something instead of drainage plan or whatever it may be. So we'll engage some engineers.
All right.
One of the challenges for this committee in putting together things is we will have to have a site and we'll have to have a very rudimentary schematic showing a building and square footage on the site. Plus the committee would have to make recommendations on programming, how much space are you going to have for your technology and for your maker space and entrepreneur centers and have that and then have a cost estimate and schedule. And so they're going to have some the hard task of going out trying to find some individuals that can help us out with that, some of the more technical aspects of the project.
Yeah. All right, what do we need to do now?
Well, I think we need a motion to
Go ahead and
to ask, to request that we form this exploratory committee,
okay, you make that
Center
motion.
Exploratory Committee.
So you make that motion?
I will.
I have a
Move
second.
that okay.
Nobody second?
You do?
Yes.
All right, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, the same sign? Motion carries. Presentation, discussion, possible action on consulting services agreement between Aransas County Alliance, local government corporation, and each of the sponsoring entities. Okay.
Right, yes, sir, thank you. So each of y'all have had a copy of this draft consulting services agreement. And what this is this draft, if as revised in any way that you'd like, would be sent to each of the sponsoring entities for their consideration. This is what we always contemplated for economic development was, and you've got already an umbrella agreement that says that y'all are going to work together, and it even specifies that there's going to be this agreement. So the main purpose of this agreement is to have a good understanding between each sponsoring entity and the local government corporation as to what the local government corporation is going to be working on their behalf.
Well, this is obviously necessary, so I'll move that we do this.
Motion made, I have a second.
Second.
Second, Mayor Rios. All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
Aye.
against.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries. All right, discussion regarding regional economic development initiatives, COVID-19 business assistance. Oh, I believe this is something that the county has just applied for, right, Kim?
Yes, we have just endeavored and have applied for some financial assistance, as well as the chamber was also working with businesses. And so they may be able to speak to this item as well.
Okay, Diane? Diane, are you with us?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Business assistance in relations to the Texas Back in Business grants, or?
Right.
Yes, and any coordination that's going on locally.
Okay. I'm sure y'all all have been made aware that the president CEO of that company passed away yesterday. Dan Slane was his name. So we're working with that company, and Simone is on the call as well. She's been keeping me up to date in terms of the Texas Back in Business grant projects that are coming to fruition. And although over 100 are under an assigned underwriter, 7 are in the process. Simone, would you like to add anything to that? Okay, I don't see that she's responding. I assure you I'll follow up with that, and I'm trying to get that business assistance flowing. It concerns me with all the COVID activity and the short worker shortage and everything going on with a heavy load this summer with tourists and making all of that work.
Yeah.
And like I said, the county has found a source of money and has applied for it from Tatum, I believe.
Okay.
And 75% of that can be used for businesses and other COVID-related expenses in the county. And 25% can be used for humanitarian reasons. Is that right, Kim?
I believe so, yes.
And Simone is driving, so she cannot respond. And Judge, so when will you know on that award? Will we have to develop a specific program for that to?
No, not right at this moment.
Okay. We can develop a program, that's for sure. It's certainly needed out there.
I imagine. Okay, that anybody else have anything to bring up on the business assistance?
No.
Update on micro hospital. Boy, howdy.
We are working on another request for information. That is going well. We're anticipating probably being able to respond back within the next week to week and a half. And related to that, all of the projects have been vetted by the GLO and have gone to the contract level. So the only one that hasn't yet is there were still some remaining questions about the micro hospital. And so we're working through that right now.
Okay,
so about 43 million has gone through, and we have this 10 million that's still outstanding.
And we possibly will finish that contract by the middle of next month. All right, update on the downtown parking lot.
The downtown parking lot is part of the portion that's being awarded and under contract or going to contract with the GLO. And so that project should start moving along. As soon as we sign the contract, then we'll be able to start a lot of the procurement activities that are necessary for that, especially including there's an environmental process that all federal grants have to go through. And so that'll be point of order number one is getting an environmental on that, as well as an appraisal, since that includes a acquisition. We have to follow all the federal, it's called Uniform Relocation Act, in the acquisition of that property. But things are looking favorable in that regard, and we'll be moving along shortly.
Okay. Update on Rockport Harbor RFP. Malcolm, is that you?
That's me. As I've already stated, we are on hold waiting for better economic conditions. It is prepared. Just waiting for the gun to sound so we can put it out. We have talked to some of those who have expressed interest, and they have asked us to hold off a little while until things are more settled. So that's what we're going to do.
Understandable. All right, Texas GLO Economic Development Study. Kim, you got anything since M&A's driving?
Well, just the fact that that study is moving forward. Like I said, I believe the judge is on a steering committee associated with that. It's a regional effort. There are some surveys that are going to be done in that regard that we'll want to actively participate in, and just, you know, be an active participant in it. It should have good outcome, and it looks at the whole region. You know, just happy that that process has started, and look forward to providing some input and getting results.
Said process because it's a long one. All right. Reports from many directors.
Yeah, I've got an interesting report on activity over the Memorial Day weekend.
Wow. Yeah.
I think anybody who lives here would think that indeed we had a lot of people visiting the beach, and we did. I don't have an exact figure at this time, but at least 30,000 people over the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday weekend visited the beach. Of that survey that I took, I would say, if not 90%, at least 90%, 85 to 90% of the people who were on the beach were not locals. The locals I've talked to stayed away. And of course, I couldn't blame them there. We brought in some figures on where they came from, and they came from everywhere. I mean, of course, most of the people actually came from the San Antonio area, followed by Houston, but everywhere in between. It was insanity, to say the least. We, at times, had people trying to get on the beach all the way backed up to past the McDonald's. We sold almost 1,000 annual passes, which would indicate that they're planning to come back. And we sold 3,177 daily passes. Adding all that up together, wow, it was crazy. It was probably better than we normally do, or it's not as good on the 4th of July. We're anticipating the 4th of July, based upon weather, of course, to be another crazy weekend. But that's my report. I tell you, I will say that our resources are stretched to the limit, and I personally stayed away from Walmart and H-E-B and everything else until the tourists left town.
I understand. I tried to do that myself, but failed. H-E-B anyway. I did it.
That's all I have, Jeff.
All right. How about you, Mayor Rios?
Well, just echoing what we're all said, the town was absolutely packed. It was good to see him, but I didn't mingle with anybody.
No.
I did happen to go by Tackletown this morning, and I was surprised they had anything left. Find a place to park there for the whole 3.5 day period. But we just look to try to dig out of this financial hole quickly with if people continue to come in this way, but hope it doesn't bring any danger with it. Other than that, I'm glad to see we got our little housekeeping pieces taken care of during this meeting so we can move forward. And we need to get going. That's about it.
Mayor Cole, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
All right. That being said, any announcements at all? Kim, do you have anything that we need to know about?
No, sir, I don't have any. I guess one of the, I do have a question though. Since I coordinate the meetings, we held a special meeting today because of this grant opportunity. And I guess I need some guidance on when you would like to schedule your next meeting, because we usually meet the first Monday of the month which would be next Monday. And I think you're probably going to need an interim report from the exploratory committee, sometime next month. So I didn't know if you wanted to just hold your meeting on a different day so that you can keep getting feedback from that group.
Yeah,
But we don't really have any other items right now, unless the board, one of the directors has anything that they'd like covered.
I believe we don't need to meet again Monday, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think? Give it 2 weeks and or
Yeah, I would do that. How long will it take to get this committee together and so they can meet? I mean, that's going to take some time, isn't it?
I would think so.
Yeah, I would think. I don't know if they'll be ready to go in 2 weeks.
We're planning on having our meeting next week again.
Okay.
At that time, we'll probably approve the committee.
oh, okay, well then,
All
okay.
right.
You wanna
We're
wait?
just gonna get the committee and then make a recommendation to the board. We'll outline the committee members and then just get their blessing on it instead of taking nominations.
Okay.
Could meet in 2 weeks and take action.
Okay. The 15th?
2 weeks from Monday or?
That would be on the 15th.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's set that date, 2 weeks from Monday, 12:30. On the 15th.
Okay,
Good.
With that,
thank you.
motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
And a
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Yeah. Okay.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.